The story of Shakespeare's last play, The Tempest.
There was a certain island in the sea, the only inhabitants of which were a man, whose name was Prospero, and his beautiful young daughter Miranda. She had come to the island so young that she had no memory of having seen any other human face than her father's. They lived in a cave, which was full of Prospero's books, and these chiefly dealt with magic. The knowledge of this art Prospero found very useful, for before he and Miranda had arrived, the island had been enchanted by a wicked witch called Sycorax. When she died, she left many of the good spirits imprisoned in the bodies of trees, and Prospero, by the virtue of his magic powers, released them. They afterwards became obedient to his will, and the chief among these spirits was called Ariel. The old witch Sycorax was survived by her son, an ugly monster called Caliban. Prospero taught him to speak, and would have been kind to him, but Caliban had inherited his mother's bad nature, and therefore he was employed like a slave, and Ariel had charge of compelling him to do his work. Prospero, by his magic art, could also command the winds and the waves of the sea. One day he created a violent storm, and showed his daughter a fine large ship struggling in the wild sea, and told her it was full of living beings like themselves. "Oh, my dear father," said she, "if by your art you have raised this dreadful storm, have pity on their sad distress. See, the vessel will be dashed to pieces, and all will perish." Her father replied,
"Be not amazed, daughter Miranda, for there is no harm done. I have so ordered it that no person in the ship shall receive any hurt. What I have done has been in care of you, my dear child. You are ignorant of who you are or where you came from, and you know no more of me but that I am your father, and live in this poor cave. Know, then, that 12 years ago I was Duke of Milan, and you were a princess and my only heir. I had a younger brother whose name was Antonio, to whom I entrusted the governance of my dukedom. I was fond of retiring with my books, and did dedicate my whole time to the bettering of my mind. My brother Antonio, being thus in possession of my power, began to think himself the duke indeed, and there began in him a proud ambition to deprive me of my dukedom. This he soon effected, with the aid of the King of Naples, who was my enemy. You and I were forced into a boat, without tackle, sail, or mast, and there he left us, as he thought, to perish. But a kind old lord of my court, Gonzalo, who loved me, placed in the boat provisions, apparel, and, best of all, my books."
Miranda, who had listened, amazed at her father's tale, cried out, "Oh, my father, what a trouble I must have been to you then."
But Prospero replied, "Your innocent smiles made me bear up against my misfortunes. Our food lasted till we reached the island, since when my chief delight has been in teaching you."
"Heaven thank you, my dear father," said Miranda. "And now pray tell me, sir, your reasons for raising this sea storm?"
"Know, then," he replied, "that by means of this storm my enemies, the King of Naples and my cruel brother, are now cast upon this island." Having so said, Prospero touched his daughter with his magic wand, and she fell asleep. He then called his sprite Ariel to give an account of the tempest. Ariel gave a lively description of the storm, and told how the King of Naples' son, Ferdinand, was the first who leapt into the sea, and although he was safe in a corner of the isle, he believed his father and all the others had drowned. "That's my delicate Ariel," said Prospero. "Bring the prince hither. My daughter shall see this young man."
So Ariel went to do his master's bidding, and found Ferdinand sitting in deep melancholy. The invisible spirit began to sing a song of his lost father, and the young prince followed Ariel's voice till it led him to Prospero and Miranda. She looked in astonishment at him, for she had never seen any man but her father. "Oh," she cried, "sure that is a spirit. It is such a beautiful creature."
Prospero replied, No, girl, it eats and sleeps and has senses such as we have. This young man, you see, was in the ship. He is somewhat altered by grief, or you might call him a handsome person. He has lost his companions and is wandering about to find them. Ferdinand, seeing such a lovely girl in this desert place, thought he was on an enchanted island, and that Miranda was the goddess of the place, and thus he addressed her.
Miranda timidly answered that she was no goddess, and was about to give an account of herself when Prospero interrupted her. He was secretly well pleased to perceive that they had, as we say, fallen in love at first sight. But to test Ferdinand's constancy, he resolved to throw some difficulties in their way, and set him some severe tasks to perform. Then, pretending to go to his books, he secretly watched them both. The king's son, not being used to laborious work, was soon almost dying of fatigue. "Alas," cried Miranda, "do not work so hard. My father is at his studies, so it is safe for these 3 hours. Pray do rest."
But Ferdinand insisted on finishing his task of stacking logs, and would not agree to Miranda helping him. He asked her name, and although her father had forbidden her to tell him, she did so. So deeply had she fallen in love. Ferdinand then called her admired Miranda, and professed to love her above all the ladies he ever saw, and that her beauty exceeded all the women in the world. She replied,
"I do not remember the face of any other woman, nor have seen any more men than you and my dear father. But I would not wish any companion in the world but you, nor can my imagination form any shape but yours that I could like. Oh, but, sir, I fear I talk to you too freely, and my father's precepts I forget."
Prospero merely smiled at disobedience, for he was pleased with the way his plan was progressing. Ferdinand now told Miranda that he was heir to the crown of Naples, and that she should marry him and be his queen. Prospero then appeared before them and said, "I have overheard and approve of all you have said. And Ferdinand, if I have too severely used you, I will make you rich amends by giving you my daughter. All your vexations were but trials of your love, and you have nobly stood the test. Then, as my gift, which your true love has worthily purchased, take my daughter, and do not smile that I boast she is above all praise."
When alone again, Prospero called forth his spirit Ariel, who was eager to relate all he had done. Prospero's brother Antonio, the King of Naples, and their attendants were almost out of their senses with fear at the strange things Ariel had made them see and hear. When fatigued with wandering about and famished for want of food, he had set before them a delicious banquet. But as they were about to eat, he had caused the feast to vanish away. He then appeared before them in the shape of a monster, and reminded them of their cruelty to Prospero, driving him from his dukedom and leaving him and his infant daughter to perish in the sea. On hearing this, the King of Naples and Antonio bitterly repented the injustice they had done.
Prospero was well pleased with his sprite, and said, "Bring them hither, Ariel. If you, who are but a sprite, feel for them in their distress, shall not I, who am a human being like themselves, have compassion on them?"
Ariel soon returned with the king, Antonio, and Gonzalo in their train, the very same kind old Gonzalo who had provided Prospero with books and provisions for his sea journey into exile. Grief and terror had so stupefied the men's senses that at first they did not know Prospero. But when he made himself known to the good old Gonzalo, calling him the preserver of his life, then his brother and the king knew he was the injured Prospero, and with tears, sad words of sorrow and repentance, implored his forgiveness.
Prospero forgave them, and upon their engaging to restore his dukedom, he said to the King of Naples, "I have a gift in store for you too," and opening a door, showed him his son Ferdinand, playing at chess with Miranda. Nothing could exceed the joy of the father and son at this unexpected meeting, for they each thought the other drowned in the tempest storm.
Miranda exclaimed, "What noble creatures are here! Oh, brave new world that has such people in it!"
The King of Naples was almost as astonished by the beauty and grace of Miranda as his son had been. Ferdinand then explained that Miranda was Prospero's daughter and had consented to be his wife. Then Prospero embraced the king and his brother and again assured them of his forgiveness, adding that a wise overruling providence had permitted that he should be driven from his poor dukedom, that his daughter might inherit the crown of Naples, for that by their meeting on this island it happened that the king's son had fallen in love with his daughter Miranda. These kind words so filled Antonio with shame and remorse that he wept and was unable to speak. And the kind old Gonzalo wept also to see this joyful reconciliation, and prayed for blessing on the young couple. Prospero then told them that their ship was safe in the harbour, and all the sailors on board, and that on the morrow they would all set sail. "In the meantime," he said, "partake of such refreshments as my poor cave affords, and for your evening's entertainment I will relate the history of my life from my first landing on this island."
Now Prospero's tasks were almost done, but before he left the island, he dismissed from his service and set free his spirit, Ariel. This filled the lively little sprite with great joy, for although he loved his master, yet he had always longed for his freedom. And he sang happily to himself, "Where the bee sucks, there suck I. In a cowslip's bell I lie. There I couch when owls do cry. On a bat's back I do fly. After summer merrily, merrily, merrily shall I live now, under the blossom that hangs on the bough."
Prospero then buried in the earth his magic books, for he resolved never more to make use of the magic art. And having thus overcome his enemies, and being reconciled to his brother and the King of Naples, nothing remained to complete his happiness but to revisit his native land, to take possession of his dukedom, and witness the happy nuptials of his daughter Miranda and the Prince Ferdinand. So we bid them all farewell. Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits, and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve. And, like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep.